Welcome. Welcome to Pioneering Partnerships, creating early stage deals that deliver. I think today I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Amanda Kay, Senior Partner at Flagship and Chief Business Development Officer. And we wanted to talk a little bit about how to get early deals done. And early deals can mean a lot of different things. It can mean looking for targets or molecules or even insights. So we thought we'd get a group of experts together to talk about their experiences and really thinking through getting stakeholders together, getting a scientific scope defined, and also really just getting organizations aligned on business structure. How do we create the conditions for early stage partnership to occur? So let's start with an easy question. Please introduce yourself, and then also describe what early means to you and your organization. John, please go ahead.
Thanks, Amanda. So I'm John Deliani. I'm the Chief Business Officer at Repertoire Immune Medicines. And I think of early deals really as the inception or beginning of a journey collectively with your partner on an endeavor that you're trying to accomplish. And the platform deals that I think we're going to speak about today are really great examples of how those sort of deals can have massive impact strategically for the partner in leveraging technology platforms that, if not for the deal, would not be possible. So that's the way I think about that.
All right.
Yeah.
Sam?
Hi, I'm Sam Nasseri. I lead business development and strategy at Generate Biomedicines. For me, an early stage deal is any platform type collaboration I tend to think of as an early kind of stage deal. Anything where you've not generated lead molecules, I think of generally as an early stage deal. So.
All right. So far, so good. Liz?
Hi, everyone. I'm Liz Levier. I lead the business development for Boston and Europe for Merck, which is in early stage partnering. So early stage, what it means for me is really anything from early biology, so it could be new target identification, validation, all the way through human proof of concept. So in that stage, we partner at all stages. Some people think that pharma thinks of waiting until clinical proof of concept. That is not true. We do want to partner early, and that could mean as early as an idea of a new target validation all the way through to human efficacy.
Gianfranco?
I'm Gianfranco De Pascale. I'm in the search and evaluation team at Novartis, and I cover platforms for biotherapeutic and RNAs. And for us, what early stage means, like Liz said, everything in the preclinical up to the proof of concept, and can go from a target ID, a cool technology to find target in one of the core area that we are in, or try to identify novel chemical matter that was not possible. And that's to complement our ability. That's what early stage means for us.
I think that's an interesting dichotomy already. We have small companies thinking early is quite early before we have a lead, and the pharmas take a much wider scope, which of course will tee up many questions to follow.
That's the negotiation.
It's already started.
But maybe to start, let's use a case example. Sam and Gianfranco just did a deal between Generate and Novartis in September. Maybe Sam, you could start telling us about the scope of that deal and what you were really looking for out of a relationship.
We were really excited to collaborate with Gianfranco and Novartis. We announced the deal back in September last year. It's really a platform collaboration leveraging Generate's platform deployed towards targets of interest that Novartis shared with us. It's multi-target collaboration. As a platform company, I think we're oftentimes kidding ourselves if we think we can prosecute all the potential opportunities of a platform ourselves. And so our ambition in working with partners like Novartis, and prior to Novartis, we had a collaboration, and that's ongoing as well with Amgen. These collaborations allow us to stretch our platform towards applications that we may not have contemplated ourselves. And that opens up our eyes to the true potential of the platform. So that's a really important value driver for us as we think about these types of collaborations.
Gianfranco, what was Novartis looking for?
We were looking for something complementary to what we have. So these are targets of highly interest for us that we really want to try to deploy an alternative technology. So what Generate was offering was a solid, wet, dry lab that we were looking for to start to test AI/ML to the next level. What they can deliver, can deliver novel chemical matter faster, something that we don't have. And that's the complementarity, what we didn't have, is what drives the deal.
I'm interested, did you see the previous deal with Amgen as a source of validation for Novartis's consideration of the deal?
Personally, and as a company, the best validation was the TSLP and the COVID program that generated by themselves. Being able to deliver molecule by themselves and going to the clinic, that was the major validation for us. Of course, the Amgen deal validated somebody else has looked at the data, and it's a robust company that can deliver, but I think the proof of concept that they ran was key.
And how long did the conversation go in terms of meeting each other and sharing ideas to getting to a term sheet? How long did it take to build that relationship?
It took quite a while. You know, we talked for maybe a year and a half or longer when, you know, was before the proof of concept. That's why I said that was the key piece of data. But I think when at some point we said, okay, we really want to test this hypothesis, we came up with a couple of targets of interest. And we said, okay, can you develop a research plan? And Generate did an excellent job. And the scientific team was so enthusiastic, they said, yes, we want to work with them.
For a second, I thought you said 8 years.
Sorry.
We haven't been around that long.
Yes. Was enthusiastic, and they said, we want to work with Generate on really difficult and challenging targets.
Great. Liz, from your perspective, what drives early stage deals at Merck, and maybe early in more of the discovery versus clinical space?
So what drives early deals is a mix of multiple things. One is, of course, we need to continue to think about the future of our pipeline and what's the next generation for patients that are currently standard of care, and what's next, and we look for those opportunities. We also, surprisingly, when we go out, we find things that we didn't realize we wanted, right?
Yeah.
This is the great thing about entrepreneurs and having biotechs out there and having folks continue that early biology. We don't really have a set thing that we're looking for. Sometimes we go out there and say, we didn't even know we needed that for patients. And so it really is that great ecosystem that we live in our industry where we really depend a bit on on biotech, you know, and really thinking about what's different, what can we do differently for the future of patients. And so, of course, it's aligned with our internal therapeutic areas and what we're good at and what we can actually prosecute and bring forward. But really, it's finding that new innovation for patients to live longer and healthier and looking for those opportunities.
I think one thing that comes to mind for a small company approaching Merck is really thinking about, especially if it's a platform that can be applied across many therapeutic areas, how do we find the stakeholders, or how do you build that connection over time with such a large pharma?
Yeah, I think it depends on the company. And if you're an entrepreneur, you should probably, whatever connection you can get, start there. So a lot of people ask, do we go to the scientists? Do we go to the business development folks? And I think you go to whatever contact you can and start talking about your opportunity. It'll eventually get to your business development folks. It will, no matter where you start. And I think using the business development function as kind of your internal champion, understanding, forming a relationship. It can sometimes take a year to do a deal. We just heard. And so they're really your internal champion to really think through at what point in time does it make sense to trigger that deal. So it'll eventually get to us. So if entrepreneurs are asking, just it'll eventually get to us. So as much as you can then eventually connect to your BD person for that relationship.
Yeah, I do agree. I had the pleasure of executing a deal between GSK and Vesalius early this summer for a lead in a number of targets in Parkinson's disease. And I think some of the themes you've spoken to really fill out that story. It was kind of a interesting platform of technology that GSK was exploring in-house, but really we thought, oh wow, if we put these things together, you know, 1 + 1, as always, creates 4 or 7. And so I think that's been really a driver of what I've seen a lot of excitement created at JPM this week, is about when we realize actually we can do more together. But John, I wonder if we're missing anything that helps get early deals done.
I mean, I don't know missing. I think Liz really covered it nicely, but just to expand a little bit, I think what we found at Repertoire and the transaction that we have with Bristol Myers Squibb was first ensuring that there was a strategic alignment, as Liz was saying, at Merck. It has to be an area that they're invested in, they're committed in. And then secondly, and I'm sure you found this as well, Amanda, that there's an aligned conviction on the potential value if you were to exploit the platform, exploit the technology in the important new medicines that could come from that. If both partners really lock arms and believe in that, then there's usually a path to getting a deal done.
Was there a conversation around building validation as you were thinking about forming the partnership that contributed to that deal in the same way we saw Novartis waiting to see how Generate evolved?
Well, I think we have you beat by 6 months. It was about 2 years from our first meeting with BMS until we signed that agreement. It was, reflecting back on it, there were sort of 3 mileposts. First was, and this happened very early on, that BMS understood and believed and had confidence that our platform that we call Decode could deliver on the discoveries and the validation and the qualification of those findings that would become part of a tolerizing therapy. But then the next milestone, the next milepost that we needed to convince them was that we could translate those discoveries into a medicine that they could envision, they could develop, and they could commercialize. And then once we got to there, and this was really through our internal programs, as we were just saying, it was about generating the data, because we're talking to very sophisticated domain experts. And the next set of data was data that demonstrated that if you did those 2 things, you could really have a paradigm-shifting medicine for treating severe autoimmune diseases. And then once we had those, it was sort of like the key in the lock clicking, and both organizations saying, we're seeing this the same way.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to both organizations, because I feel those are very deep scientific conversations. Like, it wasn't just check-ins. You were really pushing each other to see what would get things across the line.
I didn't go back and look at my calendar before this panel, but there were, I wouldn't be surprised if there were 15 scientific meetings between our groups to get to the finish line.
Yeah, and I think I wanted to build on that point just for a second, because I think the thing about a platform collaboration that is so different to out-licensing an asset or a program-focused collaboration is, once the deal is done, that's great, that's a huge milestone. But then you have years of working together hand in hand. And so a lot of that upfront process, the reason it takes so long, yes, it's about validating the technology and understanding the data, but I think a lot of it is also about building trust. And building a kind of common scientific way of working that you could then imagine this is what it would look like in practice once we execute this deal. This is actually something fun that we would enjoy doing. That helps to, I think, build support from the pharmaco, who ultimately needs to open up their wallet and put some meaningful cash on the table.
That's right. I always say, do I wish I was able to work on a phase 2 acquisition? It's so simple coming up with the price versus the details that go into these discovery collaborations, because it's kind of like the rules of the road in how you're going to work together. And in the best cases, you don't ever look back at the contract. You're just talking to the science. I guess for the pharma players here, and Liz, we could start with you. You see so many technologies. How do you rally Merck to really align on, okay, this is the one? Yeah.
It's really about what is it that platform technology brings that we don't have, that we can get to a drug faster. And so it's really finding that right technology, the right data point that convinces us technology is going to move forward. Also, there can be some great technologies, and we'll do a diligence and say this is a great platform, but we don't have the application. So then for Merck, we have to know, where are we going to use this that actually will deliver a drug that we need? So it'll be a great concept, but then where is the application for it, especially if it's a de novo therapeutic program that you'll make from that platform. Because we don't do technology deals for technology deals, we do technology deals to bring products to patients. And so if we can talk to a platform company that already has, of course they'll have their own internal plan, but if here are the 5 things we can't do that we wish we could do, that helps us get our juices flowing and thinking about where we can go. Once we get that application and are convinced this technology is something we don't have access to, that's where you start seeing the synergy.
Yeah.
I think actually, and Gianfranco, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that was actually one of the turning points in our discussion, was Novartis saying, okay, here are a number of applications that we are aligned on and excited about. And part of that is informed by how we hopefully positioned our technology, but that really turned our conversation.
And the BD conversation, just to align on that, on this, how we do the science. And even during this week, I had wonderful conversation with companies that they didn't see the application that we needed. We saw the technology, we don't have the specific what they were looking for. We said, we want to do a drug X and Y. But we said, oh, you can do something else. You can help us to make better cell line or better. And they said, oh, wow. So this kind of conversation that helps to align the technology with our needs, they are key. And that's why I think it's really important. That's why it takes longer. And we have to develop a research plan. We have to see how the group work together. Because like you said, they will work for a few years. And they're really, really important in this partnership. So it's not only I get the asset and I'll run the phase 3, even though phase 2 in licensing, they are not as easy as you think.
I'm sorry, those are early for you, I forgot.
But, yeah.
I do like to say the early discussions before you sign is like dating.
Yes,
Once you sign, it's you got now you're married.
How long did it
Now
take you to
it's-
propose?
Yes.
It takes time.
So it's really important to build the trust. And also one thing is let the data talk. Every time that I met with biotechs, I say, please, I don't want text, put the data, because at least we are all scientists. And the people that will in the end be the champions internally are scientists. And they really want to see the data. So let the data talk what you have, and we can come up together to opportunity to explore.
Have you seen evolution of that conversation over time? I think this particular JPM, I'm having a lot of conversations that are really brass tacks. What are you looking for? This is what I got. What's working? Real kind of forthrightness in terms of trying to make the match. Is it me? Have you noticed this as well? No?
I think I've seen it previous years
I
as
see,
well,
yeah,
but it's
okay.
refreshing.
Yes, always. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I think it's
Reaction?
fewer and far between. I think in platform collaborations, there's not a million of them happening.
Yeah.
And so, there was a bit of a burst when things were really hot and bubbly. And now there's fewer and far between platform collaborations happening. So I think people are just being a little bit more clear on whether there's a match or not.
Yeah, I think we've looked at the data, and any given pharma of the top 40 pharma, maybe they do 2, 3, 4 discovery collaborations a year, and that can be a lead, one's target ID. I mean, these are all very nuanced relationships, so definitely all very strategic and interesting. Maybe I'll take a minute to pause to see if anybody in our illustrious audience has a question.
Yeah, I'm curious about what the perception of the SD.
We'll get you a microphone. Yeah.
Thank you. Hi. I'm curious about what the perception would be as to the next step for what discovery collaboration in AI might look like whether that be a different kind of chemical matter or therapeutic area or whatever.
Was the question AI, like using AI as a platform for?
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
There.
It depends on what the AI is doing, right? Sometimes AI is used to find the best sequence in an antibody, right? To figure out what's a product to move forward. Sometimes AI is used, so it depends on the application, but really the first step is finding that need, right? Here's the tool, is there a need internally at the company, at the pharma company, to be able to utilize? Does that answer your question, or is there?
Yeah, it does.
Maybe I can expand. For us at Novartis is the same. Like we have done 2 different collaborations, AI ML, one for small molecule with isomorphic and one we generate on antibody. And also looking at in the translational medicine field. So we are trying to deploy AI selectively on specific field that we see where there is definitely a need and where they can bring something that we don't have.
All right, great. Well, let's jump back in with a few other questions. I think there's always this debate, how big is the perception of value differential between a small company and a large company? And when you see that, how do you describe that gap and how do you circumvent it? And so maybe, Sam, you could start with your perceptions of value, creating value and aligning on value.
Yeah, and I have to be a little bit careful what I say,
Yes.
given we're on the opposite sides of the table. I think for an early collaboration or a platform type collaboration, there's enough examples out there that give you a bound of what that could look like, whether that's on a per target basis or holistically. Like, there's enough analogs out there, unless you're doing something quite different in the structure of that collaboration. If it's you pass on a few targets to me, I'm going to use my technology to work on those targets up to a certain defined point, and then you go develop those. That's a fairly well-established, well-trodden structure. And I think there's pretty decent bounds from a value perspective as to where you operate. How do you optimize within that bound, I think is driven by so many different things. The appetite of these guys for that technology, the applications they have in mind. I think for us personally, I think one of the really important factors, well, there's two really important factors in my mind. One, the validation of the technology. And I think Gianfranco alluded to two programs that we have which were in phase 1 in the clinic from the platform. We had conviction that our platform can solve these problems. So this was not a exploratory thing for us. I think that allowed us, I think, to push the bounds a little bit. I think the second point is always competitive tension in a negotiation. Like, if you have alternatives, whether that's another company or I don't have to do this deal, that gives you a different point of leverage and an opportunity to push the bar to the upper end. I'm not saying that's what we did in the negotiation, but I'm saying like that's how you operate within this fairly.
That's confidential. So, but it is about the needs and the validation. You know, super early stage. Of course, the ask cannot be the same than something that has been in the clinic and is validated as a platform. So it's always try to find that line. And like, you know, every contract is not just the upfront or the milestone. There is so many new ones that are important, and they are part of the full package. So that in the end of the day, they can make a big difference. So it is important to see the full contract, all the details, and not just focusing on the two numbers that they get reported.
Yeah, Liz, you must have seen value described many different ways, working across programs at Merck and diseases. How would you respond to the question of bridging that value gap?
Yeah, so Sam covered it really well. There's so many comps out there too. So it's comparables out there, then it's need, right? And what are your alternatives? I would say when it's something new, this was some years back, when AI started becoming more used in our industry, using AI tools to come up with targets, without that wet lab activity, that was new, and we didn't know how to value that yet because there wasn't those comps out there. So those was an area where there was some differential gaps that we had to finally get there and get those first couple of deals going to really have those comps out there. But I think it's right. You can look externally. If you're a small company, you can look externally to see what the particular company you're talking to has done in the past for a similar type of deal and give yourself a case. Once you find the gap, and maybe there's two different definitions of it as you're negotiating, you then have to just get to that decision of whether if there is too much of a gap, what you can do. But hopefully you get to that, you understand, if you listen to the other party's perspective, and as a big pharma, we listen to our partners' perspective to really understand where they're coming from. We can usually address any kind of gap or concerns with value.
John, maybe you could speak to kind of as repertoire has grown and evolved over time, how do you think about capturing value from your deals? Certainly there's validation and monetary economics, but eventually you also are thinking about, how are you building your own portfolio or capturing or developing clinical and commercial capabilities? Maybe you could describe how you've thought about the value you want from deals over time.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right in that the transaction is a way of creating corporate value. It's not an end in itself. And so if I could back up just for a minute, for corporate strategy at Repertoire, there are two distinct modalities being developed. One are TCR bispecifics for oncology. These are clinically, commercially validated. We will take our first into the clinic at the end of 2025. We're prepared to develop it ourselves and potentially take it to commercialization. The other is messenger RNA encoded lipid nanoparticle encapsulated tolerizing vaccines, which is unbelievably exciting. If I'm a biology enthusiast, so I'm drawn to opportunities like that. But we recognize if they live into their potential, they could be completely paradigm shifting, but it's never been done before. The trials to get to catalyst events will be longer and they'll take more patients.
Yeah.
So we think about deals in those two different spaces in a very different way. In the deal with BMS, we discover the targets, the epitopes that are going to be the active pharmaceutical ingredient from the very patients that we'll be treating. So to really demonstrate validation, and if the promise is going to be realized, we have to get these to the patients. So that deal is really constructed for that purpose, that we're going to do what we do best, develop it to development candidates, and then very closely in collaboration with BMS, and then they will do what they do best, very quickly get them to patients. Now, as we evolve and we become a clinical organization, clinical company soon, we may think about tolerizing therapies and partnerships a little bit differently than we did with the first transaction. And we certainly would think about them transactions differently in the TCR bispecific space.
And over what time frame did you see that evolution of thinking at Repertoire?
I think, from the early days of formulating what we were and what we want to become as a company, this is a concept and a strategy that we've been executing on with some pivots as data arrives and capital markets change from time to time. When I joined in 2021, the cost of capital was very low, and now we're in a place where you have to be more thoughtful on how you're going to fund your company and how you're going to use that capital to drive value.
Yeah. Generate has 2 healthy deals. How are you thinking about, what would be great to achieve in terms of value from a next relationship, a next partnership?
Yeah, I think this is a top of mind consideration. We have great partners in Amgen and Novartis, and these partnerships are not resource light. They take a lot of energy. Human resources, mental resources, obviously financial resources to execute upon these collaborations, which we take very seriously. This is not on the side type stuff. I'm sure you're happy to hear that. And so I think, from a Generate strategy perspective, I think we'll be very, very thoughtful about whether we do another kind of platform type collaboration, unless there's something particularly special or unique about how our platform may be deployed that teaches us something more about the capability of the platform. If there's something special and unique, I never want to close the door. But I think for us, we really want to deploy our resources towards driving internal programs from the platform that we wholly own and have the opportunity to extract most value from down the line. And so our focus is very much there. And there's a few programs that we have now that are in the clinic, which we're very ready to progress into later stage development. Equally, it may be great to have a partner accelerate and broaden into multiple indications those programs. That may be an area we contemplate collaboration versus on the platform side at this stage in our evolution. That's what I would hypothesize. Of course, if someone comes knocking with a really great platform idea to collaborate on, we would have to look at that.
I think that's what we like at Flagship about platform companies, the optionality you could solve for and how you can really think about leveraging partnerships in a way that's advantageous to both parties. Well, maybe we'll take the last couple of minutes to talk a little bit about the types of advice we would give young startup companies really looking to also achieve pharma collaborations. Liz, what would you tell a young biotech looking to reach out to pharma for the first time?
Well, actually, I would go with what we just heard from John and Sam. If you're a platform company, I think it's important for you to keep an internal program going for your own control over timing for proving your technology, right? And utilize partnership as the expansion of value of your platform technology as much as you can, because you kind of want 2 shots in goal to get to the clinic or more if you have the luxury of doing so, right? So I think it's using those examples as kind of the footprint going forward. And so finding a partner that shares that vision, right? If there's a particular program you want to keep and you have the resources to bring that forward, and there are areas that you would love to expand, and you find a partner that is shared, has that shared vision with you, so that you can expand on and get the most value out of and learn the most from your platform.
John Franco.
Yeah, no, I second Liz completely. It's really important also that first couple of assets to start to show us data that the platform is working, like I mentioned before. And the way that we see, especially early stage platform, we want to enable that kind of development of a startup. We want to gets its own 2 or 3 assets in the clinic and commercialized, because that validates also the deal, as well as in the future we have another partner that we can work together on maybe later stage asset. Because internally, we cannot do everything. No one can. And that's why I think every time that we think about the collaboration, we really want the small biotech to develop themselves. And we look at that. We ask, how are you planning to resource this? What is your longer term plan? Even if our plan is that research collaboration. We want to see also the thinking behind. And in terms, to go a bit later on your question, how people can reach to us, of course, the website, our contacts are there, but try to find somebody in the company that you start to talk about your idea. And the idea can shape after over time in a different way. The collaboration, can go from a target deal to a completely different avenue. And try to, work with all the ecosystem, especially in the area of Boston where I'm located, or even here, but wherever you are nowadays is easier to really have this conversation. Reach out, like to the BD, to the scientist, ask the scientist to connect you with the BD, if you know a scientist, any avenue. And we see that happening. I don't see any biotech not doing that. So they find us pretty easily nowadays.
I guess, are there any pitfalls companies should avoid when they're thinking about trying to further a conversation?
Personally, I think a sell pitch without data.
Okay.
And, the first conversation is building trust, and I think just sales pitch, selling thin air, it puts everyone off and you don't go anywhere. And be professional, try to show the data that you have generated, and as well as what you don't have. Every time, it's not everything what you have, it's what you don't have and how you are getting there. Because we want to say your way to think. And we do a collaboration, we know that you will deliver because your thinking process is aligned with what we think will be successful.
Yeah, certainly getting that conversation started is just that. It's a start.
Yes.
Of a conversation that will take many, well, hopefully not 15 diligence meetings, but But maybe I could talk to John and Sam about what advice you would give young companies now that you've lived through Repertoire and Generates growth.
I think it's just stay true to your convictions and to the path that you're driving value in the technology, and very much what we've heard from the pharma representatives on this panel, which is the data is going to both drive your internal value, but it's also going to drive the partnership. So data is king.
Yeah.
As always. Sam?
Yeah, I would maybe just add two things, and I totally agree on the point of, all of these collaborations are founded on science, and science is built on evidence and data, and you can't avoid that. That's a necessary ingredient. I think for an early stage company, one ingredient that I wouldn't underplay is the non-scientific side of things, which is the trust building. And it's often not a linear path to engaging with pharma. Is there somebody on your board? Is there someone in your investor group that has a relationship with somebody relevant in these companies that you could leverage that can vouch for you? You may need to build that relationship first, and then they open up a door in the right way at pharma, in parallel to perhaps the BD conversations. And so that kind of non-linear path, as long as it helps to build trust and credibility in what you're trying to do, together, of course, with the data, I would take advantage of as an early stage company. And sometimes you have to be a little bit networky. I don't like that, and I know many scientists don't particularly like that. But ultimately, I have seen so many of these early stage platform collaborations be done where there is some relationship that is kind of underpinning the trust that ultimately drives execution of that collaboration. I think that's the first thing I would say. The only other thing I would say is I kind of see collaborations as an ingredient in the journey of building a company. And I think there's a little bit of expectation setting that small companies sometimes need to absorb depending on where they are in that journey. I'll give you an example. I was in a very small biotech before I joined Generate a couple of companies ago. We had the opportunity to do a small open the door type collaboration with a large pharmaco. And the financials were not so attractive. But I think the opportunity to open the door and test out collectively with the benefit of someone who knows about the applications perhaps better than you, there's value to that that shouldn't be dismissed. There's a lot of nuances to what I'm saying here. I think, though, what I am saying is recognize that it's a journey, and an ingredient to success on the long term of that journey are collaborations, I think. And so finding creative ways to open that door, which may not meet your highest expectations right at the beginning, I think there is still broader value to that.
Yeah, I think you're talking about trust on both sides of the coin. One, the young company has to establish that they can deliver and repeat and deliver. But if you're going to explore something that's more of a step to a larger relationship, you know, there's got to be trust that we are all aligned on that broader vision.
Definitely, yes.
Yeah. So maybe I'll close out to see if there's any additional questions from the audience. But if not, I just want to thank.
I think there's one
there is
here.
one
There
here.
is.
Yeah, I was very interested.
Sorry.
Sorry, I forgot my mic. Very interested to hear both of the pharma companies talking about the fact that they would really recommend a company to be following their own internal pipelines. Because I've also heard from others that they might sometimes see that as competitive, because you're effectively helping develop that platform, which can be used on other programs. I guess, do you see a world where a company could be fully focused on helping multiple partners and give the proof points, which are obviously one of the great advantages of internal pipeline, via those other collaborations, and therefore not need to actually keep any molecular IP themselves? Or do you see it as just essential?
So I think for a platform company, when we do a platform company, we expect that the biotech will have multiple pharma partners. We go into it assuming there'll be multiple pharma partners. Now, the company not having their own, I guess it's a question of how they continue to build value in their company, and what they're looking for in a strategy. I think if you can finance a company and continue that, I think that's great. I think we're indifferent whether it's a company's internal pipeline or they're going to partner multiple with pharma. Either way works with us, and we're not worried about building, IP of a technology platform and it being used elsewhere. That's not a worry of ours at all.
Yeah, I want to echo Liz. Is exactly, we went in the Generate platform knowing that they have another deal with Amgen, and we have multiple deals with several platforms on peptide discovery where they have 5 or 6 different. They are all our competitors, and it's perfectly fine because we see as we enable the platform, the Amgen data enable us and vice versa. What we care is to get the best drug that we can help patients. So we are not so worried about, we are competing. It's what helps to build the platform. So we really wish more people use the same platform so everyone benefits. That's the way that we see it. And if you have exactly the same program, if the pharma is interested, they will get the assets as well. So, and we do several times, we get the assets with the platform. So we don't see it as a problem.
Great. Well, thank you for that question, and thank you for sharing your thoughts today. Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.